There's a bunch of white people up here. You and one Uncle Tom on the left here. And to ask her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here.
It's really crazy that we live in a world where it's put from Fresh and Fit on the same panel with Marc Lamont Hill. Like
the reaction to Marc Lamont Hill, the glee that you saw from Fresh and Fit and from Lily Gaddis as he was reacting is something that I grapple with just as a creator.
Like, I don't care to spend my time arguing with them about whether or not they're racist. Like, they are. They know they are. And their whole point is like, and did. And what?
I don't see the utility in the virality of this one black person being in this explicitly white supremacist space.
I think that racism is fun for racists. That's why Trump is there. And when these tariffs hit and when they're back to paying $1,500 for diabetes medication and their jobs is on the chopping block, that racism isn't going to be as fun because it's fun when pain is being inflicted on other people.
To be American is to antithetically be black. You cannot be black and American at the same time. This isn't me saying that. This is America saying that.
hello, beautiful black people.
What's good?
Are we responding now? Howdy, top of the morning.
I gathered y'all here today. We are going to be talking about Candace Owens and this rebrand, loose rebrand or whatever it is that she's trying to do. But I think the general nature of Candace Owens is grifting. So I think I actually can get there from the start off point I really want to start with. And it's this clip I just saw on Piers Morgan of, y'all are going to see, because I know some of y'all haven't seen it yet. Aaron, please roll this clip.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in a country.
No, that's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. Would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
I do, quite frequently.
You use the N-word quite frequently. Why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist. Are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, but if you use the N-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendrix is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter.
There's so much I have to comment on. I have to first start because I didn't want to get by it. It's really crazy that we live in a world where it's put from Fresh and Fit on the same panel with Marc Lamont Hill. Like, it's actually...
That's what I was saying.
I wouldn't even show up.
I wouldn't even
crazy.
show up.
And
so
these
Piers
kinds
Morgan,
of optics are precisely
Piers
why
Morgan
when
too,
Piers
yeah.
Morgan asked me to come on, the answer was no, thank you. Thank you for the invite.
No, Piers.
Because what is this? That's first of all. That's first of all. Like, that's a strong first of all, because this looks crazy. Where'd they get these people?
Now, I first of all had to note the difference in the reaction between the dude from Fresh and Fit and Marc Lamont Hill when she's talking about dropping racial slurs. Like, look at Marc Lamont Hill's face,
And
right?
he's smiling.
Look at Marc. As soon as she talking about hate speech, he like, you know what I mean? Like, you listening to your favorite comedian or you watching somebody just spit. So note those reactions. But the fact that, so this woman who's speaking, her name is Lily Gaddis. I only know her not because she's relevant, but because she proves a level of racism in America by virtue of her very existence. And the fact that she referenced Shiloh Hendrix is perfect. This is a woman who was just your everyday, well, I think she's from North Carolina or something like that. She made a TikTok where she started dropping slurs on the TikTok and went viral, right?
Oh, that's the same gal. Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I remember
yeah.
now.
This is her. Come to find out, she was working for a black woman. Everybody that was around her was like, yeah, we didn't find her to be racist or nothing like that. But when given the opportunity to be elevated by the black magas for being racist, she took it. And this is the thing that's crazy to me is the black magosphere sought to make a star out of her. She didn't have no immigration policy. She didn't have no ideas about infrastructure. She didn't have no ideas about immigration. She didn't have no ideas about nothing other than dropping slurs. That's literally the prerequisite to be a star in right-wing media. Drop slurs, that's it. Like we will elevate you right to the top. And her existence and her career trajectory proves, it just shows the naked racism in the exact same way of the Shiloh Hendrix GoFundMe, because that's literally the only thing they were donating money to.
Fill the people in, Reese, on the Shiloh Hendrix, for the people that are not on the internet and don't know about this egregious white lady.
That was for me.
So Shiloh Hendrix is a single mother from Minnesota, and she got caught in 4K at a playground reacting to a 5-year-old autistic black boy who she claims was going through her diaper bag. So she ends up calling him all types of and this, that, and the other thing, right? So she's going off on this kid. She gets called out by I think it came out that the dude who was videotaping her was actually like with the family, because he seems to have like a lot of information about it. But she ends up getting called out by virtue of what she said. And she repeats it again, throws it at the dude who's videotaping, and then says, this has got to be one of my favorites. If he's going to act like one, I'm going to call him one. Which, why does that make you not racist? Wow. Like, I don't understand. Like, so show me where you call your kid that, right? Because your little kid, I'm sure, acts in the exact same way because he's of a proper age. So unless you can show me video of you dropping on your kid and a bunch of other white people, that is not a flex. That just makes you racist.
And also, what does it mean? Like, if he's gonna act like one, then I can call him one. Like, what is this child doing? What is the action that is apparently behavior?
Being 5.
Right.
Being 5. Can't be 5.
Being 5 and autistic in this case. So
yes,
add ableism to the bill.
It also feels like the implication is like she criminalizing the little boy. Like she's trying to suggest she thought he was stealing out the diaper bag, and that is the behavior she's speaking to, which is crazy. But it really speaks to how they criminalize, like, black children don't get to be children, like out the jump immediately.
And then they've raised, last I checked it was close to 700,000. It was like in the mid 6s, has been raised from a GoFundMe to protect her family because she has to relocate because she called a 5-year-old boy. I gotta go. Why does
she have to relocate? Like, I love to remind people that, like, George Zimmerman is alive, like, walking the street. Like, it's such an anti-black thing that just does not, for better or for worse, line up with how black people have habitually treated, like, virulently racist and violent people. Why do you have to relocate? Like, literally, what is happening to you? People are coming for you online. Like, you're not even going to receive repercussions. That's what's so wild to me about this. But I will say, to the Piers Morgan thing, I feel like in the moment where we are with kind of like the transparency of white supremacy, I have to be honest that, like, I don't care to spend my time arguing with them about whether or not they're racist. Like, they know they are. And their whole point is like, and what? Like, we live in a white... No, seriously, it's just like, it's our time now. And so what they're mad about is the idea that you would think that they would have to pay any consequences. But, like, I'm a little bit over being like, let me prove to you you're a racist. No, duh! Like, they're racist, and they know that they're racist, and they don't care. And the point is that they are trying to say is, like, how dare you think that I will reap any consequences?
Yeah,
for being racist. So that's what we should focus on. Like, what are the consequences that we would want, or we can articulate, or whatever? Or we should get people mad that there are no consequences. But, like, I'm sorry, Piers Morgan shaking his finger, the racist Piers Morgan shaking his finger at that woman, being like, you are a racist. What is that doing for any of us? Like, what are we hoping to gain from that?
I'm just happy they're not gaslighting us anymore. Like, all these years of, I'm not racist, you're racist for calling me racist. Like, bitch, be proud that you racist and don't give a damn. And then we don't have to be triggered by it, because what is there to be triggered by? White people being racist. Like, is that a revelation for many of us that a bitch that look like her is racist and is gonna support a bitch like Shiloh Hendrix? No, like we already been knowing that. It's not like breaking news. So Piers Morgan and all the performing about virulent, racist, and despicable. You in the same boat. The only thing is she's owning her shit and you ain't. That's the only difference between the two of them.
What I think is interesting about this, and I agree with you, like, it's the reason why I find it difficult to even be in the States, because of just the fact that they're just out and about letting you know exactly how they feel. But more importantly, and I think Marc gets to this, is the tangible violence and the inimical environment that being able to be vehemently racist, unabashedly, unambiguously racist. Like, this ain't no beige, this ain't no mix, like, miscegenation racist. This is full-blown, pass the paper bag test racist. And they will let you know that by being racist, it also allows for you to be dehumanizing, because that's what being racist is. It's basically to dehumanize you as a person. What could you do to people that are not people? You can do whatever you want to them. You can make them property. And what could you also do to property? You can neglect them. You could even set it ablaze. I mean, slash and burn agriculture. Basically, they could do that to. And I've seen this when I was traveling to New York just about a couple of weeks ago. I was one of the lucky that had their phone taken from them by the U.S. immigration when I was going over. And
it's just
of course,
to use a bold nigga to still be traveling.
But
like,
I don't get. I want them, because as soon as Trump and them shine their little orange ash around me, guess what? I wait for my Bahamian passport, because guess what? Touch me and let international law deal with you. I don't want to try it.
So mad when the Bahamian government leave your ass for dead.
If they do,
if they leave you for dead. By the time as Trump say, by the time as Trump them say this who you want dead and show them your
maybe Libya, please. They are putting. They are taking people to Libya right now. Don't do that. Don't play games.
I won't say that won't happen for every Bahamian, but definitely not this Bahamian. But now, mind you, when they did take my shit, and I of course locked it so that they couldn't use my face and everything like that. It's just like, open your phone. They say, no, you can't make me do that, Officer Patterson. I'm sorry, you can't make me do that. And then they were just like, well, do you have a problem with me getting inside your phone, sir? And I was just like, you know what? No, but I gotta go. And if you make me late for this flight, then you have to go and pay for my next flight. Basically, from the onset, the whole point of that tangent is that they letting you know before you even get to their borders that this what type of time that they on. So the borders.
I'm so envious of this experience you're describing. Like, this feels I can't even move on. Like, it feel like that day. Like, it's. I think it's like an early Dave Chappelle joke about, like, when you're white people, like, they discuss their version of the police stop versus. I'm like, boy, talk. I have 2 passports. I was like, we Bahamian, but we ain't the same American citizen, because that right there, they'd have hand me if y'all had never hear from me no more. I'd have been in ICE custody.
For real.
I said, you said no. Oh God.
I know that joke where he said, the white dude said, "I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know I couldn't do that. I didn't know I couldn't do that. I didn't know I couldn't do that. I didn't know that was an option." Like, they know we know the law.
That's literally what that felt like. I'm sorry, Warren. I know you had a point, but the immigrant in me just couldn't.
I was waiting for you to go on your immigrant tangent. I saved like one immigrant tangent per video.
I can't even travel domestically right now without jumping them carrying on, like let alone internationally. And you traveling to and from, talking crazy to the people at the board. No, man.
And I can travel about next month, and I can let them know ahead of time too, just like I let my bank know. Because I ain't with them. I say, listen, if y'all can do it, y'all can do it. But I do enjoy, like, my detached status away from the States to the extent that, I can, because of course when you all sneeze, we die. But regardless, sorry.
I love this life you live in. That reminds me, we need to see Marc Lamont. Hell, Aaron can play that again.
Use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N-word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
You're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendrix? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly. Your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist. And you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it.
I wanted to see the one where Marc Lamont Hill apparently is rowling.
I'm sorry, I was so preoccupied with the look on the white lady's face on the side.
Rebecca literally just sent it to me just now, just out the blue.
Oh my gosh.
There we go. I was just, that's amazing. There we go. I just sent it there.
Country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly, and you will
go
not
on, then
have
say it. Say
you
the
will
M-
not have
go on, say the M word. Go on.
No. Don't invite. No. I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word. That's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here. You and one Uncle Tom on the left here, and to ask her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent, Pierce. I understand what you're trying to do. But we already know she's racist, and I don't want to invite a racial harm to me.
I hear you, and I accept that. And we'll leave it there.
I have to point out the look on the lady in red. She they told me that they was going to be talking about the Met Gala up here. I don't know what happened. What happened?
They don't, because they don't. In my email, when I got invited to go on there, they asked me. The email was like, "We want you to come on like soon too." It was like an hour or something, and they were like, "We'd like you to come on and talk about U.S. politics on a panel." And I'm like, whatever might that be? That could be any thing. And I remember I was like, no, thank you. That sounds like a setup. I know a setup when I see one. And then I saw it later, and it was like Candace, Marc, some other like racist people. I said, God knew why it wasn't gonna be me. Because look at this. This is insane.
This clip really just is killing me. I'm sorry. Like Marc going on Piers Morgan in the first place is insane. So I'm just like, I don't even know what we were expecting, but watching that, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like I thought we left 2014 news pundit era. Like, I thought that, I'm not gonna start naming names because but I thought that we left
Name
this.
Look at Ray.
Name them. Let's go. It's friends. We're among friends.
I just thought we left this post BLM era news pundit moment behind. So just watching this panel is just like, what are we even really doing? And are we actually concerned about racists, or are we more concerned with this? I'm just not really clear what the concern is, because it's just like going on Piers Morgan is inviting some sort of racism, irrespective of whether there's an overt use of the N-word or a covert just display of anti-blackness, because it's fucking Piers Morgan.
I would also highlight this too. The reaction to Marc Lamont Hill, right? The glee that you saw from Fresh and Fit and from Lily Gaddis as he was reacting is something that I grapple with just as a creator, because there are things that I don't begrudge Marc Lamont Hill's anger at all. I totally get it, and he's justified in being that angry. But you also are aware that's going to trigger that kind of reaction, right? People are going to behave in a way to trigger that kind of reaction just for their own entertainment and glee, and just so they can have something to say on the other side of it. So just as somebody who's kind of creating content and commentating on things that happen, that's something that I'm aware of.
I mean, I think that's exactly my point. Sorry, go ahead.
No, Deshaun, you go.
I think that's exactly my point. It's just like, I don't know. I understand. I want to be clear. I understand why Marc was so upset, and I'm just kind of like, going into a space like that, whether you knew who was going to be on the panel or not, I don't think really matters, because you know who's hosting the show, and they don't give a fuck about our anger, righteous or not. They don't give a fuck about us being triggered. They don't give a fuck about us being sad. They don't care about what we feel, especially as it relates to their racism, their anti-Blackness. And so for me, it's just kind of like, I hear you, Marc. I understand, like, why you are angry. And I am a little bit confused about why he made the active decision to be in that space, considering.
If I could,
I was just about to say, I was like, I have a response, but you go.
No, I wanted to, and you probably go in there too, Limey, because I feel like, and to Marc's credit, because I think it's a valiant effort, that he is putting himself into these spaces to be the contrasting voice, especially because, like, we just saw him recently in proximity to Joe Budden, having to basically go against phrenology, which go against phrenology. I don't know if the other guy is Black. I'm sorry, I'm not tapped in like that.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, he's Black, and he was defending phrenology, and so he basically had Marc Lamont Hill very calmly, at least, or at least a lot more magnanimously than I would be, trying to reason with him and let him know the error in his ways. So this is kind of the same thing, in my opinion. Like, I see him in, a situation where he's in proximity to people who he may very well expect, or would not be surprised to, at the very least, create calumnies in some way, shape, or fashion. I'm not going to pathologize Marc. He's a smart dude. But ultimately, I think he knows where he's coming. And I do also share the same sentiment as Deshaun, where essentially, as creators, we know what a clip is. We know when a moment is being made and molded so that it could be commodified later. And it hits a little bit different when you're the person that is the content. Not you are participating in making content with equals. That's a different dynamic. No, you are the content. You are the marble that is being molded into something that will profit everybody else but you there. Because right then and there, I'm not going to equate him to a minstrel, but the drama, the delectability of him, having to clamor out for his humanity is what's being commodified there. As you say, the simper of the white people around him, and him grimacing. Maybe a white girl over there thinking about what she could go and have for dinner, maybe cheese. Basically, that's dystopian and uniquely, ancestrally painful for me to see. And I hope the brother is good. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
That's very real. I agree with everybody in different ways. I think what feels so clear to me, and like I know that Marc knows this, but like what pissed me off, like he can have whatever reaction he wants to have. He can go off, he can cry, he can scream, like that was outrageous. But it was just like so clearly, the whole thing was so clearly not about him, Like that's the whole premise. It really goes for like, it is about kind of like liberalism and like white liberals and basically like their obsession with like civility and appearance. So the whole point of that segment was for Piers to position himself as not racist, based only on the fact that he doesn't say the N-word out loud. Like, not any policies he does or doesn't like, not how he treats Black people, not what he cares about the material conditions. It was just like, you're a despicable racist because as someone with much less power and much less influence than me, you're willing to say the N-word out loud. So you're the problem and I'm the solution. And it felt like, so that is what felt so disrespectful to me, that like wasn't about Marc. They just had Marc there to be a Black face, but it was about Piers. And I think the like ruling class he represents, like performing their own goodness based on the most shallow manifestation of racism. If you listed all the things about anti-Blackness that I'm concerned about in the society, white people using the N-word would be dead last. Like I would want to fix everything else before I fix that. And I'm not trying to minimize language, because I do think the way that folks are moving around language is illustrative of the way that culture is shifting and norms are shifting, and norm shifting towards white supremacy has real material impact. So I'm not trying to belittle that. I think that's important to watch. But I was just like, this man really wants us to think that he's so much better than this woman because he's not willing to say the N-word on live TV. And he's just completely speaking over and ignoring the two Black people on the thing so that he can have his moment. I don't work in content, but like to you guys' point, like that to me was what pissed me off.
The other dude is Black?
Like they weren't even pretending to care or center the Black people's opinion about this. This was about them.
Yeah, it's meant to. He's intentionally trying to reinforce the idea that racism are only these overt acts of where people declare I'm a racist. If I can't get, like, that's what racism is. When this person identifies as a racist, says and tells you that they're racist, right? Which is incredibly harmful. I think it does. I think it's meant to accomplish three things. I think it's meant to introduce to what you were saying about the culture shift around language. Her being there intentionally, like proudly saying, like, yeah, I'm a racist. I say that, all of that is intentional. We are going to see from here on out, we are going to see the rise of them suddenly saying, yep, I'm racist. Let me say openly. That's what they're trying to bring back, right? In conjunction with this Trump administration that has ushered that in. So I think it's that. It's also the idea, like, turning Marc is the content. Like the Black progressive voice on there is always the content, which is why I said no personally. I'm like, I know these things are setups. When these kind of people invite me there and you don't tell me, you invite me late, you don't tell me who's there, you don't tell me what you're talking about, I know it's for you to contrast me with whomever else or whatever is on here, and that's what the content is. That being said, I don't blame Marc for showing up in these things. Like I've been on right-wing shows where you across from a fool. I'm sorry, let me not call that man a fool, because I just realized, like, you say it and then you realize, oh, you host one particular show, they know who you're talking about. Like, my apologies. But where they have you across, like, sitting up with these right-wing people and debating them and X, Y, Z and all of this. And I understand on all the different levels why people create that kind of content. They create it because, one, people like salacious, like, entertainment. They like arguments. They like debates, right? My problem with those things, and I always say this I say this a lot, because I feel like people will see on my viral, like, debating with some right-wing person or some idiot, like, it always goes viral. Whenever it happens, it's always a viral thing. And people will ask me, like, oh, like, how do you win arguments? Or what do you say? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what y'all need to understand is those people that you see me there talking to do not think, if there were not an audience, an internet to weigh in, they would not think I didn't convince them of anything. They would not think I won. They would be telling all their friends, It's only because there is this, internet consensus, and that's based on people's already previously decided positions. Like, these things, I don't personally believe they change people's opinions. I don't think they are meant to educate folk or whatever. I think they go viral, but I also think the other utility, I think, is not in informing people, but in it not being, there needs to be somebody pushing back. You know what I mean? I guess the idea that it isn't just this, like, right-wing vacuum. There's somebody to say that or whatever and speak to that frustration. And I see why that's valuable. I personally can't bring myself to, like, I just have too much anxiety, and, like, just who I am as a person, I get irritated. Like, I can't do that on the regular. And because I know I can't, but I know there is a necessity that somebody does that. And I appreciate that Marc does do that. I think it's harder. The reason why I am willing to see the benefit or the utility in Marc going on places like Paris Morgan, even though I can't be bothered, is because Marc is on the Joe Budden podcast. He's not, like, it wasn't just a one-off. He's on there now. He's, like, on as a regular. Yeah, Marc Lamont is regularly on the Joe Budden podcast. He's on the Friday show. He first started off and, like, doing one-off show here and there, and then he was on the Patreon, and now he's on the Friday show. So he's on the Joe Budden podcast. And a lot of people, I've been hearing now since Marc has been on there, a lot of people find Marc being on there valuable. Like, they do feel like he's breaking through and explaining why these niggas' positions are ignorant or whatever. So I can see what that benefit is there when he does that, in the Black community space of the Black ignorant community thought, and so I'm like, I can't imagine the utility of what it is for, the white equivalent of that, because I just don't speak to, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't get them in the same way. But I imagine that because I see that it does have some effect on people who are consuming it from the Black side of things in the Joe Budden, I imagine that it serves some necessity there, but I can't do it. So, but I get where Marc is coming from.
But I do like that at least, like, at a minimum, he made it not okay to use the N-word in front of him. And the last thing, like, I think, okay, you white people, you can use it, whatever. I don't give a damn. I don't expect anything different. But what you're not going to do is use it in front of my face. Now, I would have been more indignant and more like, I'll beat your ass up on here. I'll jump through the screen. I wouldn't have been, you know, oh, it's violence against me, and it's going to be violence against you if you use that word in front of me. But at a minimum, I do appreciate that he did not create the space, because the problem is sometimes our people in our community, we make people feel too comfortable with it. Like the motherfuckers who be sitting up there laughing with Andrew Schultz and this other, I like that he called him Uncle Tom. That was funny. You know, like other people that they invite white people into these spaces and make them feel comfortable and like it's all a key. So, you know, maybe it was a little emotional. Maybe he gave triggered, but we should never, ever sit on any panel unless somebody get permission to say that word in front of us, period.
Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. I think that for me, the pushback that he gave made sense, right? I don't think that he should have allowed for this white woman, she really irks me, to to say that word. So I'm glad that he pushed back in that moment. I think for me, I see the utility of a cishet black man existing in a cishet-ish black space and having those sort of intra-communal conversations. That to me makes a lot of sense. And it like, for me, I'm like, you know, the virality of that makes a lot of sense to me. Olay, like I do hear you, and I feel you.
I'm getting ready to agree with you. I hear the distinction you're getting ready to make. Once you've already made that, like, and I'm like, I actually feel that. I'm getting ready to concede. So you proceed.
I don't see the utility in the virality of this one black person being in this explicitly white supremacist space, because while there may be, right, because I do think that there are perhaps, you know, one or two white folks who might watch the interaction and be like, oh, okay, you know, like maybe like, you know, maybe that one white person in Wyoming or something is like, oh, I feel for black people. But I don't think that. But I don't think that the virality of it makes like. I don't think that makes up for. What am I trying to say? I don't think that that the virality of it actually helps, right? That I think that, like, in fact, it actually is more harmful, right? Like that I think it's actually more harmful, not just for, you know, the fact that it brings in more views and money and notoriety for the people who are on the panel with him, because let's be real, Marc Lamont Hill is much more famous than anyone else on that panel, except maybe Piers Morgan, right? Like, and that's a huge maybe, because he might be more famous than Piers Morgan. So I think that it gives them more credence, but it also, I think, opens up Black people to a world of harm that I just don't think is necessary, because there's no actual benefit on a large scale.
You got that.
I think I was going to say, like, obviously we have no idea what Marc was told that he was going to go on for. To Olay's point, like, it could have been very vague, and he could have been like, "Oh,
Marc
I'm about
also
to
appears
really
on there regularly too for content.
well, I'm about to like really educate people." But I think, to me, the distinction, to Sean's point about like when would you think that the pros are worth the cons, is like, I do think if you're talking about things that Marc needs to like explain or break down, like policies or like connect dots, it's good in some ways to have someone be like, you guys are actually not talking about this correctly. There's nothing to explain about why the N-word is bad. Like, it like either it is or it isn't. So that is why it felt more goading. Like, it was about getting a reaction out of him, because he wasn't going to offer, there's no insight to offer about that issue, the way that maybe there could be insights to offer about criminalization and what that does and the harm of that and how that doesn't actually make anyone safer. One of the millions of things that Marc is very brilliant about.
Right.
But let's be honest, he's benefiting from it too. I mean, he gets his clips.
Yes.
He's going to probably do a
Yes.
YouTube live that everybody's going to watch, and he's going to get tips and all that kind of stuff. So like, he's part
That's
of
true.
the content creation ecosystem. So he's not a victim in the situation. He knows exactly what he's getting going on Piers Morgan. And so, you know, the optics of it, depending on which side you fall, don't look the best, but he's very much a willing participant in this situation.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, you know, his indignance and his intellectualism and all that stuff, that's all great. But at the end of the day, it's all about the profit. And everybody in that picture is profiting some way from their presence in that platform.
That's real. I think that's real.
Yeah.
But I think he could be not the victim, and like there are just like levels of like decency that you should expect, even with knowing all of those things, that I feel like having a white lady scream the M-word at
That's
you
crazy.
is below.
That's crazy.
Is below that.
I'm like,
Nobody signed up for that. That's nuts.
I'm like, just to shoe Mark a little bit more bail, as you know, somebody knows him and also who's in everybody's content creation business and be analyzing what they're doing with their channels and what's happening and cross-referencing where they be. To be fair, I truly think that Mark appears on these places like Joe Budden podcast is separate and aside, but appears on places like Piers Morgan because he truly believes, whether I agree with it or not, but I think he does it truly for what he believes is the benefit of that audience hearing him, but not necessarily the benefit of him, because Mark goes on there pretty regularly, and we don't really realize that. People don't realize that Mark is a frequent appearer on Piers Morgan because we're not watching that. Those clips aren't going viral in our circuit. But if you go look on the YouTube, Mark will be on Piers Morgan on a day where Candace Owens there, yada yada, has millions of views, and that will not translate to Mark's YouTube channel because that audience there no one in that audience is watching Mark and discovering them and going, oh yeah, I want to go hear that. Let me go over to his channel. Yeah. That's not happening. So there really isn't that. Like this is like the exception outlier when something goes viral because it's so like Piers Morgan and them clearly orchestrated. That's what they were looking for. So this goes viral, and he might get a little 1-2 extra views from us on the live talking about it, or you see it go more viral on social media itself. But as far as where the money is made, like on YouTube or whatever, like that ain't translating it like for him financially. So I truly think Mark really believes in the utility of it.
But profit isn't just monetary. It's engagement, it's views, it's notoriety, it's being shared, it's profile being increasing. So I'm not saying that he's like some craven capitalist that's trying to get a buck, but I'm just saying that every person, when they agree to appear on things, you do your due diligence, you know what you're getting into, and you hope that you get some benefit out of it. You know, there's no benefit in being called the N-word, and he rightfully shut that down. You know, and how he did that is debatable in terms of whether it's a good look for him or not. But at the end of the day, he knows the business. He's a pro in this business. He knows exactly what he's getting into. Okay, so I mean, I get it, right, but it's still layered in the sense of he's not naive.
You're right.
Right. There's hella incentive. There's a lot of incentives, and we can't just act like there's some.
Yeah, I definitely see Reese's point in that regard. I'm also grateful that there is some pushback in that space. It couldn't be me, but I'm grateful that the ends was just allowed to run unchecked. So I'm glad that somebody among us was willing to stand there and deal with that. Not unlike how we send foreign through immigration to see if it's cool before I'm gonna go through. Like, hey, let me see if it's cool before I'm gonna go through. Like somebody gotta do that. But where my mind goes with it, right? And this is like referencing something I believe that Raina said earlier, right? Is like you have these avowed racists, like people that identify as being racist, and the fact that they're so open about it and they're being platformed is very reminiscent of like Phil Donahue, 1988. You remember those old talks? I'm dating myself. Apparently, I see Reese nodding. The rest of y'all like Donahue.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
before
is very much giving that is coming back. But the wild thing to me is that a lot of these people in these like in this media space that openly identify as racist and do and say openly racist things have access, right? Like the line between them and people that are creating policy is like the line separating these boxes right now. And that's like the kind of stuff that I want to highlight, because we have these conversations about is the racism of the administration, the racism of this policy, racism of that policy. The people surrounding them identify as racist. Like that's
white nationalists,
extremely relevant to our evaluation of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate them admitting to being racist. Like I really appreciate it, because I think half of the work that people expect you to do when you do the kind of work that we do, or they just expect Black people to do, what they expect Black people to do, just period, is you're constantly in this like gaslight Olympics of trying to convince everybody that this is racist, that something is racist, that something that is racist, right? And because we're always, it's like everybody's willing to accept the premise that racism is bad. What they will do is pretend everything ain't racist. You know what I mean? Like start debating and challenging everything. So I actually think that I see what they're doing. Like I know what I feel is the larger play, what they're trying to usher into the era. Like they want so badly to be able to, like, you know, they want to make it where, all right, now this Trump thing is free. We back to being openly unashamed racist. But I think they're forgetting the utility of why racists started going in the closet about being racist. You know what I mean? Like why they started gaslighting us and all of this. It's like, yeah, it's all fun and games. You think you're going to create the times of, we're going to be racist, we're going to say that. But what happens is it becomes much easier to challenge, you know what I mean, these things, to explain why, to attach it to whatever. It's like it feels like having too much dip on your chip. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're very excited. But I'm like, I think this is going to backfire ultimately, because most of the, now you can explain and you can see how these things are tied together. And it eventually, it doesn't take all 5 people in the group to admit that they're racist. If 2 or 3 people admit that they're racist, it makes it easier to discuss how this is obviously present. These things, how y'all are working this whole ecosystem. Yeah,
we
like
know
there's
what's
only
up.
one. Like, let me put it this way: he could shame her and call her a disgusting racist, right? But he invited her on his show. He invited her on the show. He knows what she is. She has a platform. He invited her on the show. They know what she is. Then you call her a disgusting racist or whatever, yada, yada. But how long before you think she's back on the show again? Appearing frequently or whatever, yada, yada. So it's like, it will eventually, no matter though that he's trying to do this song and dance and make it this spectacle of like, see, I'm not racist, and use it to position themselves that like racism is only this extremist here. Eventually people will see, well, if this person is an out and proud, unashamed racist, and you keep company with them and invite them and platform them or whatever, eventually it makes it easier to discuss the racism in the room at large. That's what I think.
Can I just say for the record,
she just came out as racist after she was on the show. That was it. That was she found her true identity after 30 minutes of listening to Fresh and Fit. She was like, yeah, there it is.
Can I just say for the record, I cussed Piers Morgan's ass out bad. I said he was a piece of shit. I mean, it made the Russian Times propaganda. I mean, it went viral. He responded to me. I read his answer field because he was always going after Black women. So, you know, I don't think I'll ever get invited on the show. I wouldn't go on it anyway. But if he wants to ever pretend like he ain't said some anti-Black racist shit, somebody just pull up my video and let it know that he's been told before that he ain't shit.
I want to talk about the too much dip on your chip thing, because I do feel like I've been thinking a lot about this, and it's like what you're talking about is kind of in the like media cultural realm, but it's playing out very much politically. And I feel like that is the battle right now between Democrats and Republicans. They're like, if you don't shut the fuck up, like we need to convince everybody that we live in this colorblind era so we can do all this crazy anti-Black shit, but we're not doing anything that's like so not transparent. I think it was Ta-Nehisi Coates who talked about like the elegance of the racism of like white Democrats. Like, you're being too sloppy with it. Shut up. And we want to be in the era where we're pretending to do the right thing and then secretly doing the wrong thing. But I think what Trumpism is saying is like, actually, that's a losing strategy. Like, y'all had too much dip on your chip, and like that didn't really work for you because you weren't like part of the people are like, why don't Democrats have this vision, or why can't they like rile people up? And it's because like they don't believe what they say. Like, they can't sell it with their chest because they do not want to build the world that they pretend that they want to build. Whereas like Trumpists are honest about like who they are and what they try to believe, and they don't feel like they need the tools Democrats use, which is like pretending there's colorblindness, to pretending like we're working towards multiculturalism, because they've just aggregated enough power and influence to be like, no, we're in like a full-on white nationalist white power era. Like, stop talking about Black people. It's why they started the battle, like they didn't start the battle here, but that's why a big part of this battle was like killing CRT, because they were just like, stop with that shit. We don't care about slavery. slavery. We don't care about Black history. We don't care about Black people. We don't care about anti-Black discrimination. We're the ones getting discriminated around. And I just feel like the moment that we're in is a little bit proving that that theory works in like a majority white supremacist country. And I get, and I feel like Piers and her was playing that dynamic out exactly. He was just like, stop saying that shit. That's racist. And she was like, I don't care. Like, it's kind of like Gen Z and millennial. It's like, you're living in the old world where you had to play by those rules to get away with your shit. And I'm living in this world. And like that clearly is working for her.
I agree.
I get nervous.
I agree. I just think their world is short-lived. You know, when you watch a movie about niggas about people getting rich, like super rich. Do you know when you watch Wolf of Wall Street and they wildin'? Yeah. You know they living big, they living fast, and you know that shit is coming down. Like when you watch Casino, like you know, oh, okay, yeah, like that. To me is ultimately. I mean, ultimately they all serve the same gods, right? Like that. To speak to your fundamental point, right? So I guess like. It doesn't truly so much substantively matter. But I think, to me, I feel like they're in an era. They are in an era, and it feels like, yes, they're proving that they're winning. But to me, it's like, your era is one of the past for a reason, right? Like, it's existed before. It's a tactic. It's something you do. We've lived in this era before. It's happened before. And there's a reason why they have chosen they flip out of it. There's a reason why, you know what I'm saying? So to me, it's like, I see what extremism makes it. There's a reason why some people I don't agree with them, there's a reason why some people like when you come into a Trump era, or when there's extreme racism happen, or when there's some police brutality video viral, because they feel like it's easier to galvanize people around that, right? And similarly, I think when you are this extreme, when you are this like on its face, when you're not like, while it's happening, I think it's gonna happen big. There are real harm is caused. Like, it seems like you're winning, they're dismantling things, like they're being very successful in their white supremacist agenda. But I think at the magnitude at which you are doing that, and you're being loud and you're being hateful, people are receiving that. You know what I mean? Like, people are receiving that, and there's eventually a bigger response and pushback and fight to that. So that's why I think there's a reason why people like to move in the dark. It's harder to untangle, you know what I mean? To address, to deal with, you know what I mean? You get people caught up in the dance. There was a reason why, remember when Black Lives Matter first as a slogan, they spent how many years did people spend arguing between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter? And how much air did that take out of the room from being able to discuss anything substantive on like an agenda that you want? Yes.
I was gonna say.
But can I just say,
crazy is, remember back then it wasn't even a debate. That was a thing that the liberals used to be like, no, that's racist. Don't say that. Mm. And culture has shifted so much. I feel like most people now would be like, well, all lives do matter, which is wild how quickly that shifted.
Well, I think that like racism is fun for racists. That's why Trump is there. Like, all of the other Republican nominees or candidates had the same policies as Trump. They just were like racist light, and like he's like racist turbocharged. But the problem with that is that all this fun they're having with racism and illegals being shipped to Venezuela or El Salvador and now Libya, and all of this fun that they're having with DI is dead. And when these tariffs hit, and when they're back to paying $1,500 for diabetes medication, and their jobs is on the chopping block, and all this other shit, all this stuff smacks them in the face, that racism isn't going to be as fun, because it's fun when pain is being inflicted on other people. It's fun when you're being homophobic or transphobic and that pain is being inflicted on they, them. But now everybody is about to feel this pain in a way that they did not anticipate. They anticipated pain for everybody but themselves. And so the utility of racism is going to be less powerful for the Republicans, because that's been their ace. They've now played it, and now their policies are going to be implemented and not have the results that people who expected them to fix their lives or make their lives better with a side of racism for that extra fun. They're going to be like, that's not enough. Now, will they change from MAGA to Democrat? No, but you're going to get some of those 89 people's asses off the couch to vote them out. You're going to get some of those MAGA people to stay home and be a little bit less motivated. So there's only so much more fun they can have with the racism, because they've checked off almost all the boxes in terms of the culture wars. They won. They got rid of abortion rights on a federal level. They're getting rid of any kind of due process with immigration. They're getting rid of trans people in sports and in the military and all kind of stuff. There isn't much more left for them to win on the culture wars. So at some point, they're going to have to deliver something outside of that. And they can't possibly do that because their policies are ass backwards.
And I would add on to
think we're
that,
done.
like it was all fun to dunk on anybody with an operable brain when you decided to nominate a bunch of reality TV stars to be in your cabinet, right? While you're going on an anti-DEI hysteria and disqualifying anything remotely brown or female or LGBTQ, whatever the case may be, but you want to handpick your people just because of how you feel to be in these high-level positions. It was all fun and games until they had to do the jobs. Right. And you got Pete Hegseth sending out, invitations to signal chat to me and Deshaun. And you got the Secretary of Education talking about A1. And you got RFK Jr. learning about studies that NIH has done when he's asked about them in an interview. It's all fun and games until they actually have to show up and do. Yes, that's the new one. That's the new one. So to Reese's point, right? It's all fun and games to dunk and say, "Oh, look what we can do." Till you actually have to show up and prove all of this nonsense that you've been trying to sell us about the power of whiteness.
But I think the work is making sure that the people that we're counting on to be fed up are like connecting the dots correctly. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion because we've seen historically anti-Blackness has not served white people, especially poor white people. But it's only really rare moments in time in the 60s, like around Fred Hampton, MLK, that we've actually seen like real gains in convincing that poor white people that even when they're down the absolute baddest. So like I hope that we see that, but they can just continue to double and triple down on racism and blame the insulin being $1 million on immigrants, and that's because we're not doing XYZ or our international relations, or we're spending so much money on criminals and murderers. Like they say whatever and people believe it. So I'm not trying to be too pessimistic, but I think it's like a lot of work to make sure that people are.
Me too, girl.
I am pessimistic. I just want to give people optimism so they don't complain.
I don't think they're going to be less racist. I just don't think that is going to be the ace.
Like, I'm down bad, but I'm not as down bad as you.
Yeah.
Like I'm down bad, but I'm not in El Salvador and Seco. It's just like, no, seriously. Yeah. Like I feel like anti-Blackness has always, white people and poor white people have always been victims of like structural anti-Blackness, and that has not necessarily convinced them to get their shit together and align with us or align against their horrible leaders.
No, I don't think they're going to be any less racist. Be very clear about that. I'm just saying that racism has been all that they've had to offer, and now that they have delivered on their promises of all of these racist things. I mean, we still have the fight over birthright citizenship and some other things, but I mean, the big ones, the big ones, they've so-called delivered on. And so yet we still see the Republicans ratings tanking. We still see their approvals going down the drain. And the pain has only just begun. So all I'm saying is, are they going to be any less racist in Wyoming or Montana or in Appalachia? Of course not. But will their racism be enough to say we're going to continue to let Republicans run everything? I'm skeptical of that. I don't think that that will be enough because there are enough people on the sidelines that will then get off because, to the extent that the trans attacks worked, or to the extent that the immigration attacks worked on keeping people at home, I think that they're going to realize that we got bigger fish to fry. And that's what I think this is showing now that they've accomplished all of those culture things, that there's still a lot of big fish to fry. And that did not solve any of the problems of this country.
The Supreme Court listening to oral arguments on Trump them wanting to end birthright citizenship on May 15th.
It's wild. I don't think the DEI thing, like, we have not even seen, I think, close to the end of that, because I feel like the logical conclusion of that is they're going to try to force every person who's hired a Black person to prove why that Black person was the best person for the job. Like, that, to me, like, is where the legal discrimination strategy is headed. That's like, there's a rebuttable presumption that Black people are not qualified for their job. So now, first it's like, oh, you can't overly, benefit them. Obviously, we know that's not what the fuck that is. But then it's just like, you can't say anything about race. And then I think it's like, you have to prove that this person is the most qualified in ways that I think are very hard to do and are going to be a headache and a liability for a lot of employers. And so they'll just stop hiring Black people.
And you know what's funny? That is the existing standard for immigrants like me. Like that is what my jobs have to go through. So I know people can't imagine how hard and how unemployable a standard like that makes you. Like how difficult it makes you and how much it makes companies not want. And they know that. That's why it exists for immigrants. You know what I mean? Why they have to do that. So I 100% believe that's why they're just going random, because people might hear that and things that sound like, oh my God, like where could they do that? Like they do that. They've already gotten it off that like, oh, immigrants are people we can do that for. And if they get people, because they have consent for that, they have a public that says, yeah. You should do that with immigrants. Immigrants shouldn't get the jobs, they shouldn't whatever. And they're manufacturing the consent for that now with Black people. So I actually completely agree right now.
Dark.
It's bad. It's real bad. It's just real bad. I wish it was. I don't got nothing optimistic to say. Somebody more positive jump in.
If I wanted to be less pessimistic, I would say that because they have gone so far off the deep end of removing any appearance of consideration of that, nothing can be called DI anymore. Nothing can even have a whiff of that. Then they've almost insulated companies, because now those companies have removed all that shit. They're not doing any DI. They're not doing any affirmatives type of steps. And so really going forward, at least, it's going to be harder to make that case. Now, will white people still sue because they didn't get a promotion or they didn't get a job? Of course. But on its face, the policies don't exist anymore in many of these big corporations, in schools and in states and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, I'm not saying that they won't find a way. I mean, they're giving reparations to the J6ers, the insurrectionists, so they'll find a way to make that work. But in theory, if you've eliminated all these policies on paper, then that's less evidence that's there as a default. That's just if I'm being optimistic.
I think Olay, don't jump me, okay? Don't jump me. But
the word is optimistic, Deshaun. Optimistic.
As the resident Afro pessimist here, I don't know that I can offer the optimism. But what I will say is that I don't know if this is optimism per se, but I do think that, and what I do genuinely hope for, is that we collectively as a people move towards a real interest in doing something else. I just really hope that, because what I feel is true is that Democrats have proven over and over again that they are not fighting for us, the very broad us, right? Whoever is included in that. And we are experiencing a rise in fascism, like true fascist violence. And fascism, all we have to do is look at the 1940s. Fascism is not something that is voted out or something that you can replace by changing out senators or changing out Supreme Court justices or changing out, Congress members. Like, that's not something that just happens by changing policy or changing politicians. And so my hope is that we arrive collectively at a real commitment to doing something different, right? Like, even on a small scale, how many folks are invested in really trying to organize their apartment community members on like a rent strike?
Yeah.
Or like, how many folks are like really invested in trying to, produce something that goes beyond talking about quote unquote civil engagement and voting rights? And the reason why I'm naming that is because I live in Atlanta, right? They just opened up Cop City. They just cut the ribbon for Cop City, something that we had organized against for years, where we experienced like an undercutting, where folks came in with this deep interest in nonprofit politics and voting rights that completely disrupted and in many ways disbanded a lot of the radical organizing that was happening against Cop City. And now we're witnessing the ramifications of that by the fact that Cop City is open. And so I just hope that as we move into these next rounds of voting, that we consider, like, yes, right, you know, vote for folks who are going to, you know, have your back more than perhaps others, right? Like Marjorie Green Taylor, or whatever the fuck her name is going to be running for Georgia State Senate, which, anyway, you know, we're not going in to go vote for Marjorie, okay? We're not doing that. And also, let's prioritize doing some things on, like, with our actual community members that move us forward, irrespective of that, because the reality is these Georgians, not all of them, but a lot of Georgians here are going to vote for her because she's Brian Kemp's replacement. If it ain't going to be Kemp, it's going to be her to them. And so it's like, so how do we show up for our folks in the middle of that? And that's what I'm hoping that we figure out together.
So, in retort to that, because I think that's a really good segue into something that has been illuminated ever since from time, but even more so last year. I mean, I left the States, like, for all intents and purposes for the foreseeable future, 2022.
I love that for you.
But this is Fanonian.
This is a waste of citizenship.
This is so wild. No, I could go back and forth and I can make money over it. That's all I really want from the States. I genuinely find far more. I find far more. I know it's frustrating. But wait, because before you go on your tangent, I know. But wait, to be, and this isn't on me, to be American is to antithetically be black. Like you cannot be black and American at the same time. This isn't me saying that. This is America saying that. You know, so like when we talk about organization and when we talk about like rallying behind mobile politicalization, what does that look like for black people in the States? Because like when we hear people saying, black people, this is not your fight, sit out, you know, don't get engaged with what the white people are doing, let white people fix white people problems. How exactly does that translate to the black people that just have to kind of be Stockholm Syndrome, neck and neck with their colonizers and kind of be at the behest? Because we've seen black people have been instrumental, the fuel, the combustible in any engine for change in the States. In many places, I would even argue. The black class, if not black, then the black class has been the one that's been combusted in every case for revolution. So at this point, as we've seen 10 times over, how exactly does this relate? Like, black people, are they going to stay home in the States? Like, are they going to then put themselves up as fodder yet again for a care and a cause that has every time and time again, shown you differently about how they value your contribution to the human condition? What does that look like? And, you know, maybe this is a little too Gavi. Maybe this is a little too separatist. I understand totally. But practically and pragmatically, when Deshaun talks about Georgians and talks about community, that sounds like a good start, like intimate community. That makes sense. But how does that look like historically? Because if you look at America just telling you all what it is, it's been telling you all what it is, and we know enough from time. Mm-hmm. As Deshaun sounds like he's frustrated about the same thing that we all are, which is that we are essentially reacting and we're in this cyclical torture of enduring anti-blackness time and time again, pontificating about it, and then gearing up for the next time. So what exactly does it look like?
So
I mean, I don't think you have to think about liberation for black people in the context of like how we can like transform the entire nation state. Like, I do think that that's like not like a colonial way to think about it, but I do think it goes with the electoral politics of like, yes, black people and like a black kind of liberation frame is never going to run the United States, because like you said, it's antithetical to like what the US is as a country and what it represents. But I think that like we're all only as free as we can make each other, whether you live in a Black country or a majority white country. You know, like you could live in the Bahamas, you could live in Haiti, you could live in white or South Africa, and you're still subject to like imperialism, colonialism. It's like you're never really free from these forces. But like, I think we all have to be in the practice of trying to think about what we can do to build a life for ourselves and each other that like feels as free as possible. And I don't think you ever like get there. But I think like to Deshaun's point, like what feels important and transformative for Black people in this moment to me is like not wasting undue times on tools that were never suited to like fix the problem. And I think that like he can obviously talk more about Stop Cop City, but like this idea of this like radical organizing that was not following any of the rules, but was creating extremely effective disruptions to what was happening, not using the electoral process, not being like, you know, let's vote them out or whatever, but just being like, I'm a person and I'm smart with other people. And if I like sit my ass up in this tree, they can't cut this tree down type things. We're making much more possible in some ways than being captured the way that we're often captured to like do it with inside the process. So I guess what I'm trying to say as a Black person who thinks and who has ancestry from all over, including from America, and considers myself an American, I've long asked that question, like, what does Black liberation look like on American soil? Like, is that a thing? But I think where I often land is just like, it's not. This sounds corny, but it's like, it's not a destination. It's like a lifelong struggle that you hope to be part of and get better at, and like that your kids will learn kind of from you. But like, I don't think any of us, especially as a Black people in the globe as it is now, are like safe from white supremacy, from imperialism, from any of these larger structures, or any safer than we're willing to like actively fight to make ourselves at any given time.
Right. So what I want to say in response to both of you, because I really love what is coming up here. Well, first, just an FYI, my pronouns are they, them. But beyond that,
I'm sorry,
I want to say, no, that's okay. I wanted to say that something you said feels important to like point out, where there's been this like very Negro liberal counterinsurgent idea that has emerged recently where from Black folks who are like, we're not gonna attend these protests because we're tired. We're not gonna show up in support of these movements because we're tired. And for me, it's mind-boggling because one, a lot of the people who say that have never organized a day in their lives. That's just number one. Like, when they say they're not going to show up, they mean they voted and that's it. And I'm just kind of like, okay, so that's number one. That's number one. But number two is just naming that what has sort of undergirded a good bit of Black resistance, both in and outside of the U.S., is this idea that we want to salvage America, or that we want to save something that is inherently destructive, that exists with the intent to destroy us, right? And so for me, it's like, if we're talking about what Black liberation means, it means honoring the fact that we're not saving this shit, that there is nothing here worth saving. And in fact, that just doesn't just include the US, it means everything that is touched by Western imperialism, which then people are like, well, we don't even know how to really imagine anything outside of that, because everything we know is touched by Western imperialism. So that means that everything that we know now no longer exists. And my response to that is exactly. And until we get to a point where we are no longer interested in salvaging the world, saving something that has been designed with the intent to destroy us, then we will never arrive at any real understanding of a Black liberation, because we are too invested in savoring the thing that makes Blackness possible, that makes race possible. And so, yeah, that's where I land in this part of the conversation.
Well, I'll just say, for me, I don't think of voting in terms of voting for America. I think of voting in terms of my existence, my self-preservation. And I've said this on your show before, Olay, I'm married to a local politician. Now, he has a full-time job, so he does it on the side. But I'll often point out that we have 500,000 elected positions in this country at the state and local level. We have so much power in our neighborhoods. We have a town in which my husband is one of 5 commissioners on it. And as those commissioners, they determine whether we get speed cameras up. They determine what kind of programming we have. We had a utility reimbursement because 25% of the town was behind on their utilities. 0 people accessed that, despite the fact that it was talked about in meetings, despite the fact that it was letters that went out, emails. And so there is so much resources concentrated in our areas that if we're in these positions, and not all Black people are going to be saviors of the Black race, or not all Black people are good for us, but I'm saying that there's a lot of power financially, policy-wise, concentrated at the local level that we almost never talk about. When we talk about Democrats and Republicans in America, we're skipping past 98% of the way that power is concentrated in this country, because even what happens at the federal level still has to filter through the state level down to the local level. So we are leaving so much untapped power, and that power probably, Deshaun, to your point, isn't going to necessarily translate to Black liberation, but what it can at least translate to is a better way of life in the meantime, and a little bit more protection. So that's the kind of stuff that I look at, is the fact that I was on Clay Kane's show the other day, and we had a caller call in and saying in Louisiana, they just, in a parish, they just elected their first Black mayor ever. So, we're still in places where we're heavily concentrated, being ruled by Republicans, white Republican men often. And so I'm not willing to say that we've exhausted all that we can do with electoral politics when we almost never have the conversation about mayoral positions, about commissioners, about the school boards, about, to your point also, about neighborhood associations, about HOAs and things like that. There's power that is intentionally and deliberately dispersed around this country that we don't tap into far enough. So I'm still in the electoral politics boat. I don't think that that's going to be, I think this shit's going to hit the fan before we get to 2026, or 2028, even if we even get there. But in the meantime, there are still a lot of things that are happening at the local and state level that we have to be engaged on. So I'm all for an all of the above approach, but I'm personally not for taking the electoral approach off the table, because we have still never, ever really maximized our capacity, even with the people that are registered. We don't have to even go out and get one additional person registered. Even if we just exercise our capacity with people who are registered, that will make a world of difference, in my view, based on what I've noticed in my neighborhoods and in the local politics.
I think one of the things that comes up for me, and I appreciate incredible insight from all of you, but one of the things that's come up for me in listening to you guys is my feelings of Blackness and Americanness wrestling with one another. And what I mean by that is the sense of my reaction as a Black man to how America has so far done me and people like me. And I don't have to explain that too much. But at the same time, the thought of how much equity has already been put in to this thing that we call America. Like, for instance, when they went and purged all of the, so many of the Black soldiers, right, from the military records, right, over at the Pentagon, and you heard from so many Black veterans, right, and Black soldiers who talked about how they felt about that. I have grandfathers that have fought and served in wars, and I have uncles that have fought and served in wars, stuff like that. it's kind of like, this comes up for me like during the Olympics. This comes up for me like around election time a lot of times, where there's this weird thing between Black people and like patriotism, where generally speaking there's like a line that's separating the two, but that seeds so much of what so many people have put into creating and erecting this thing. And I don't know that that's something that need be seeded. Like, yes, they haven't offered our just desserts, but that doesn't mean that we don't deserve them. That doesn't mean that the work hasn't put in for us to still ask and request those things. And with regards to one thing that Deshaun said, where you talked about people deciding to sit out, which was a fascinating, that was a fascinating development. That actually was evident to me on election night, right? Where I saw like people just like there was like it was like a horror movie where everybody's running away from the monster, like what I was seeing on social media during election night. Like that, it was evident that people were reacting very strongly to this. And it was like that for like a couple of days when it came to interacting with people. Like there were people that just weren't answering the phone, people not answering texts, people not watching stuff. Like people went away. And it's hard to judge people's responses. Like it kind of reminds me of the Marc Lamont Hill clip, right? Where I was like, I kind of hate that they reacted the way that they did to Marc Lamont Hill being angry, but I get why he was angry. I get why he was angry, and I have to give him a certain amount of room in order to work that out. Now, to the point that you made, Deshaun, about a lot of these people just voted and did nothing else, you're 1,000% right about that. Like, so there's a lot of people that are putting on a revolutionary hat for doing nothing and staying on the couch. You are correct in that regard. At the same token, I feel like I have to give people the space to work and wrestle with the full ramifications of what America just proclaimed in November.
Definitely.
Because those things are really wide ranging, and I have seen people react in a, some people have to come out of it more quickly. Like I happen to be in a blue I'm in DC. DC is very blue. People think it's not. DC is very blue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in DC, so I kind of have a certain amount of leeway in order to take my time with it. Everybody else doesn't. You know what I mean? If you're in a red place, if you're in a rural place, you kind of have to go about your life and deal with your reckoning like as you do. And I don't know what that process looks like. I don't know what that process feels like, but I feel like I can't dictate it to you from here.
I don't think electoral politics need to be taken off the table for me. I think it's like how much energy are you putting into different strategies feels more like the question that I'm interested in. I think to your point, Reese, about like veterans and stuff, and to Deshaun's point about like, or Deshaun's point about like, what are we imagining or what are we working towards? My brother's a veteran, like my grandpa's a veteran, like I have veterans in my family, but this, and I understand the disrespect and kind of like I think quite frankly, like the lie we've been sold about what that does or what that means. But like, what does it mean kind of to like take pride in kind of like violently representing the United States interests abroad?
Right.
Like what,
Correct.
like quite literally just what does that mean in a non-judgmental way? But like you deserve respect or recognition for like taking up arms for empire. Like I'm not judging anybody, but I do think that those are the questions we should be grappling with rather than spending so much of our time wanting a larger market share of recognition or space in these institutions. I think, quite frankly, for many Black people, if we really had the space and time to kind of sit down and unpack and like do our communal political education, we don't fuck with at all.
Correct.
Often on my show, on Sirius XM, people call in. These are Black people calling in. you talk too much about immigration. Why you care about immigrants? That ain't our business. That is not Black people's business. And I have to constantly explain to people why immigration is Black people's business, in addition to the fact that Black people are immigrants. And I have to constantly say, well, I'm connecting the dots for you as a non-immigrant Black person, while also saying, to be clear, I don't think that these things should be happening to Black immigrants either. I don't think that immigrants should be mistreated. I don't think that their humanity should be stripped away. But since I know as a default you don't give a damn about that, let me try to connect the dots for why, immigrant profiling will impact you when if they want to say Haitians are eating the cats and the dogs, and you look Haitian or you look like whatever. So I have to constantly make a multi-pronged appeal to people while slipping in, yes, their humanity matters. Why are we with them? They're not bothering anybody. But there is a lot of xenophobia when it comes to immigration. There's a lot of anti-Blackness within different immigration, and some Black people have experienced what they believe is anti-Blackness from immigrants, and vice versa. So there are so many layered elements of immigration that are really detrimental to everybody, because to your point, this manufactured consent we're seeing our citizenship being stripped regardless of your citizenship, regardless of your status. If they have a warrant for somebody, or they claim to have a warrant, and they come in there like the woman in Oklahoma, had them outside in their underwear, stole all of their belongings, they don't give a damn. You can't tell ICE, who's roided up and all ready to cocky diesel, get some people out of there. Oh, I'm American. Look at my passport.
Right.
You can't, they don't give a fuck. So
Right.
there's so
Due
many
process.
ways that citizenship is, and I said this the whole election, citizenship is on the ballot. Citizenship is on the ballot. That people don't understand that the immigration fight is a fight for American citizenship just as much as it is about the humanity and dignity of people who are just trying to exist in this country. And I mean, unfortunately, because of the campaigns that we've seen, the disinformation campaigns, because of the way that we've seen this kind of diaspora wars weaponized on social media, and the trafficking that we saw of migrants from Texas, dropping them off in Chicago, and I remember during the election they had a fake food stamp receipt. Oh, this immigrant in front of me had $10,000 of food stamps, and my daddy got $75 of food stamps. It's like, having to combat all of these things is really not just detrimental to, people who are immigrants, whether legal or not, but it's also detrimental to everybody who has bought into this notion that this is a crisis that allows anything to go to fix it, because that anything is putting all our asses on the chopping block. And I wish that more people would understand that.
Deshaun?
I would also add that there's been a lot of instances that I've been blown by America's lack of reaction to things. There's been a lot of them, but right up at the top of the list has to be the movement to free the administration to deport American citizens.
Yeah.
The fact that hasn't been a 5-alarm fire. Like, we heard the man talk about homegrowns are next and we need you to build another. The fact, and maybe us being melanated folks, generally whenever something happens somewhere, we go in and connect the dots. You know what I mean? I'm trying to see how long it's going to take to make its way around to us, but obviously a lot of people don't do that. The fact that hasn't been just that hasn't had people reacting immediately and grappling with that is insane. But this is the thing. You can't simultaneously feel a level of protection from opening up the administration to just deport whoever and see that level of citizenship without admitting to the kind of racism they argue every day doesn't exist. You can't do both of those things at the same time, because it's that racism that you proclaim every other day doesn't exist that is keeping you from shouting down their ability to go into people's homes. That's what you think is going to protect you.
Deshaun?
Yes. I didn't want to okay. I have a long thing to say, but it's important because I feel like so much has been offered here. So many great things have been offered here that I want to respond to. I think of Atlanta as like a testing ground almost. Atlanta is a place where we have a Black mayor, and we've had a Black mayor for over 50 years, where we have a majority Black city council, or at least had, and have had a majority Black city council for a long time, where our DA is Black, where for the longest time, majority of our, like a huge majority of our citizens were Black. Like our population was made up mostly of Black folks. The numbers were a lot bigger before gentrification, but we won't talk about that. And so I'm naming this to say that Atlanta is a place that has hyper-focused for a very long time on local politics, precisely because of the ways that we have this sort of white flight that happened, and the ways that Black folks were pushed in and outside of Atlanta. And so I want to say that my point was never about whether or not folks should vote, right? I have zero interest in that conversation because I think that we end up getting stuck there and we never get to talk about much larger things that directly affect all of us, irrespective of whether you do or do not or can or cannot vote. And so I'm naming that to say that elections for governor, Atlanta, Georgia, turned out in record numbers. Black folks turned out in record numbers to vote for Stacey Abrams, and she lost twice. Lost twice. Because we know undoubtedly the first time it was stolen from her. So I'm naming all this to say, not that electoral politics are unimportant or don't matter or whatever, but to say that Atlanta is a very clear, do prioritize electoral politics almost solely, and it does not turn out to be enough, right? Where you have a Black mayor who has prioritized police lives, money, experience over the lives and financial stability of their community members, right? Where you have historically Black colleges like Morehouse and Spelman and Clark, and I can talk about them because I went to Morehouse, that have a vested interest in destroying the surrounding Black communities, right? And are able to do so in large part because of the corporations and the government assistance that play a significant role on their board of trustees, where you have several different Black communities within this state that are overdetermined, or rather that has been made clear to them that their voice, what they need, what they want, do not matter to the people who are elected to lead them. And so my point in that is to respond both to Reese's response to me, but also in response to Reese's point that the things that Black folks, the role that Black folks played in building America is not equity. It was forced, right? And to me, I don't think that we can use the word equity to describe our sort of contribution to the building of this country or to the building of Western imperialism, because so much about it was and is forced, right?
I love that we're talking about Black immigrants, Olay, because I
I don't, child.
I
These people.
love talking about that shit. No, but it's
You would be the only
so
person that does it because nobody.
no, because it's stupid. We all want to talk about white people, especially like lower income white people being dumb bitches for not understanding how when they create this technology to oppress them, it's used on us, it's used on them. It is the same thing with immigration. Everyone talks about, oh, we're black, we're citizens. We weren't always citizens. Enslaved people were not
I want
citizens.
you
They
to
gave that shit to us and
understand.
they can take it away. Like,
You
we
don't
can't
know
be
how
like,
deep the
this is
hatred for black
wild.
immigrants go from other black people. Like, I was saying this every episode, or I rarely talk about immigration or being an immigrant. Like, I try to stay away from it completely because
I
the
know
amount
you
of
do.
hatred I get. If you did not know better, you would think every episode of Olay and Friends, we talk about immigration, the way there are people in the comments just attacking immigrants because I'm there, and it's my thing, it's my channel, but because I am, just my presence is enough for them to feel the need to have this anger. I gotta show y'all a comment I got that was so crazy. And it's funny too. I love to click on like these people and see that they follow all the other like black people that are my friends and in the space who are Americans. So the hatred is reserved for me for being an immigrant, because like I clicked on this person and like they're like big fan of Cam James, who's my boy and I love. And it was on. They left this comment. It goes to show just like they couldn't even have watched it. It's just anytime of recently, it's become that anytime anything happens that black people like and love in America, they it's within a second, it's somehow they propagandize it as being made to be anti other black people, right? So there are of course those people who did that with Sinners like immediately. I had an episode of Olay and Friends where I had Omar Miller, one of the star who played Cornbread and Sinners, on the show. Omar is talking about the movie that Omar starred in. Everybody's saying we haven't even seen the movie. Here is a comment from a black, the African Caribbean third world immigrants via the immigrant hub of New York City doing commentary on black American films such as Sinners, thinking it's a horror movie, not understanding the deep elements to it is hilarious to me.
Oh,
Americans, descendants of
no.
USA chattel slavery, who primarily live in the USA South from Delaware to Louisiana. It's not a commentary video. I'm not talking about the movie. I haven't seen the movie. Just by virtue of I'm an immigrant, I'm telling you, the hatred people have for me is insane. Like, I don't even gotta be speaking. I got the star that they asked me. Sinners reach to me. They like to come to here to promote their movie. Oh, this nasty immigrant from this immigrant hub, blah blah blah. You talking about this? You don't know. It's everything becomes something to like put me in my place. Like, you are not qualified to open your mouth because you're not a descendant.
Okay.
That's
Really
that's kind of the ADOS FBA, like chaos agent, and so that's their script, and they're definitely people that are programmed to attack certain things, and that's their only scripted. They like to say tether and all kind of bullshit. Honestly, like I've battled with every single one of them like years ago, so I'm blocked on, and I blocked everybody. So.
Me too.
Yeah, but I mean that's their thing. It's a chaos operation, and it's effective to a certain extent, you know, because they are so prolific and relentless and turning everything into, you know, us versus them thing. That's why when Trump invoked the whole the 13th Amendment is about slavery, I was like, that is his, or is it the 14th, whichever one. I was like, oh, that's his dog whistle to the ADOS and FBA people, so that they can go take that and say, oh, all these tethers and all these immigrants want to leverage the work of black, you know, ADOS and da 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 da. So it's all part of their system of trying to sow that division and to make people disillusioned and to feel like, oh, look at what they're getting and we're not getting this and da 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 da. And it is,
but it's catalyzing something that does exist. Because as someone who has American ancestry and Caribbean ancestry and African ancestry, it's like having divorced parents. It's like everywhere you go, someone's talking shit about the Caribbeans are talking shit about the Americans and the Africans. The Africans are talking shit about the like always trying to distinguish themselves from Black Americans. Americans talking about, oh, your African boo smells crazy, African booty scratcher, like whatever thing. So it is a real thing, but like this is a wild analogy that I might not land, but it reminds me so much of like I identify as an abolitionist. It reminds me so the Black American relationship to like citizenship and like Americanness reminds me so much of like the conversation around like wanting kind of like cops and like people who do harm Black people to be convicted in the criminal legal system as a strategy, because it's like this idea that like I'm deriving my value and my self-esteem by these like markers of citizenship, that I feel like this is all that I get and this is what I am owed and it's so important to me. And it's not like neither of the, I get that. I'm not judging it, but I'm just like the limits to that are so low. Like the criminal legal system is never going to exist to do anything other than like largely subjugate us. Even if they convicted and every single killer cop, like that's not going to change the design of what it's meant to do. It's just going to like throw more people in the pot. And I feel like that's the same thing for citizenship. It's like, even if Black, oh, go ahead, Aaron.
No,
Even if Black Americans get treated better than immigrants in the best case scenario, like that's still not going to get us to where we need to be. And like the whole point of the reason why we treat like non-citizens the way that we treat non-citizens is because we're trying to bulk up technology to reserve all of the good things of this country for like rich white people. So like the same way I'm always telling people, like, can you stop? What people need to do is acknowledge that like whether or not somebody is criminalized, they should not be subject to dehumanization, period. Because all we need to do is change who's labeled a criminal to make you subject to that dehumanization. It's the same thing with citizenship. Like you need to fight for people, whether or not they are citizens, to have access to good lives and lives of dignity in this country, because all they need to do is change who is labeled a citizen, and you will be subject to that treatment. And they can't. Do people think the Constitution is like animated by the Spirit of God and will put its foot down at a certain time? It's a piece of paper made up by men as a lawyer, interpreted by hundreds of Supreme Court judges over time, and is very subject to change. So like I don't understand people's feelings of like, it will never be me, because like we have seen for Black people, we have come in and out of that category already. We are in a fascist regime where all of the categories are rapidly shifting, and it is ass backwards if we think that a strategy of not caring about immigrants is not going to whoop us in our ass. Do y'all remember when there was a border crisis when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were in office, and they had those border police on horseback whipping the Haitian migrants, cosplaying slave catchers, once again whipping the Haitian migrants? Like, I just don't understand how we don't understand that's like you're paying you are building up RoboCop that is absolutely going to Uzi you.
Because
like,
the entire world hates immigrants. Like this is I both hate and appreciate that I have been receiving the immigrant experience my entire life, because I was born and raised in the Bahamas. My mummy's family entirely Bahamian. I'm Bahamian through and through. But my daddy is Nigerian, my face is Nigerian, my name is Nigerian. Bahamians feel like you Nigerian, right? And by Nigerian, I shouldn't even say they feel like you're Nigerian, because no one even gives you the respect of being a Nigerian. You're an African, which is a slur. And by the time in the Bahamas and in the Caribbean, for them, worse than being African is to go be Haitian. So that's how they treat you. And that is how the Bahamas is like that about other, and everyone is like that about other. I think the reason why people feel like it is okay to treat immigrants this way and it won't affect me is because every country kind of has a carve-out understanding that it is okay, patriotic, and necessary like water to treat immigrant, excluder, you know what I mean, other. That everybody is trying to train to believe we have a finite amount of resources, and immigrants are coming to steal it. We have to curtail it. There has to be the system. And similarly to the analogy you were using, Raina, yeah, people are taught the same way I feel like people are taught that the minute you're born, you're taught like 911 to call police, you know, good and bad, right? Good cops, bad, you know what I mean? The robbers, cops and robbers, right? Like you're already taught these analogies. And so that's why it's like, it seems so foreign and outlandish to even question, like when people hear abolition or any of these things, because you are quite literally taught from the beginning of your life to see that as like that is what happens in a society. If you even play a game, I always find it interesting. Whenever you play a game on your phone or something, you have to like build a community or build a town. They require you in the game to put a police station in the game, right? Similarly, that's how it is about immigration in every country. Everybody is like, we have an immigration system. They are immigrants and we have to deal with them in some kind of extra way. It's always funny, like the entire time when you're doing constitutional law in law school, and every time, you know, when you get to the civil rights era or progressive, we're getting all these, you know, rights XYZ, as they're like, okay, strict scrutiny for race. They're like strict scrutiny for race, intermediate scrutiny for gender, rational basis, whatever you could do on immigrants. Like, you know, and everybody accepts that, right? Like that's what everybody accepts. Like, oh, there's supposed to be wide latitude because we are doing this to protect the people whose it is. And it's easy to get people on board with that when people already live at the mercy of all these systems that they don't necessarily understand that they're at the mercy of. All these systems are doing that to them. So they are living a life, most people are living a life of scarcity where they already feel like they're trying to get their government to give them the bare minimum that they're not doing, and they're struggling, and they're taught that the reason that the government isn't doing this, like Bahamians will tell me this to this day, when Bahamians were rounding up Haitian immigrants like a year or two ago and putting them underground, I have Bahamian friends of mine being like, well, the government ain't have no money to do nothing else. There's only so much they could do. And there's this like, people enable, the government teaches people to believe that the government that they've empowered and given these resources and control over them, hands are tied. They don't have much money. They don't have much ability to even help us. So it only makes sense that they stop these fucking immigrants from taking what little. That's the inherent. It's not just the propaganda that they enforce, telling you that immigrants are taken from you. The inherent rationale and justification for immigration as a system, as a metric of understanding, as a classification around the world, is the idea that they're taking something from you. And so the government has to stop these. So that's why everybody is so cool with it. They're like, yeah, of course, you know, that doesn't apply to me because I was always like, it was always meant for you to keep other out. Deshaun, just finish spitting.
We literally had a power outage in the middle of me cooking. I was like, damn, like I didn't know I had that much power going on. Like, what's up?
That's hilarious.
No. The entire point that I was making was just that Black folks gotta do something, and we know that like we helped build this shit, but we didn't build this shit because we asked to. We built this shit because they made us. And what we've been able to contribute has been brilliant, beautiful, significant, important, right? Culture, language, everything about so much that exists in the world wouldn't be without niggas. And I don't want that to be the thing that leaves us beholden to these countries, these Western powers that do nothing but destroy everything in its path. That was my whole point. And I think that Atlanta is a perfect example of exactly that, of what happens when you try to create conditions for Black folks to exist in power under a white supremacist structure that removes them from any solidarity with Black people and Black struggle. And that we have experienced that time and time again throughout history, as veterans, as politicians, as people who have been like given access to community boards, all the things, right? That in the end never actually changed our material conditions because the structures in place require a level of commitment to white supremacy, anti-Blackness, imperialism that doesn't make room for us, our politics, our liberation to be possible. And the only way to undo that is to move away from trying to salvage America. And I don't just mean that in like voting to save America. I also mean that a lot of our movements have been with the purpose or with the intent to save a structure that is designed
I think
to
that's a
destroy
good
us.
final
So
word, honestly. That's real rap
that was
bars.
my only point.
The Illuminativerse is huge and always expanding, so let me tell you where to find everything. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long-form video essays, my deep dives, and my backlog of content like Iconic and Illuminati joints are all on the main channel. Subscribe to my new channel, Illuminati Politics, so you don't miss my interviews with Brad Lander and Zoran Memdani, who are running for New York City mayor, as well as my State of the Union type addresses that I do with my O Squareds, and any explicitly political content I have planned for you going forward. Subscribe to Illuminati Pop for all my TV and movie takes, reviews, and breakdowns. We have all the fun over there, and we also have a Patreon for Illuminati Pop where you can get all the videos uncensored. Subscribe to Olay and Friends for my podcast, Olay and Friends. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes but don't have an hour plus to spend. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for all my writing.